This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Anindra Mal. The show is a live broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. We'll be at Parliament shortly for an update ahead of Ahang's challenge of National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete's fitness to hold office. Road rage incidents are almost normal on South Africa's roads these days, and today we ask why. We also cross to Swellendam in the Western Cape ahead of a mass memorial service for 8 correctional service officials who died in a crash last week. And we close with the annual Cape to Cairo roadshow. But first, let's just have a look at today's news. Condolences and tributes are pouring in this morning after the death of ANC stalwart Ruth Mompati. The ANC stalwart has died at the age of 89. She worked for the ANC in Tanzania and Zambia in the 1960s and became a member of the ANC Women's League's NDC. She was also one of the leaders of the anti-pass law march to the Union buildings in 1956. Talking to Morning Live earlier, Minister of Home Affairs Malusi Gigaba said Mompati's death is a tragic loss for the nation.
Ruth was an icon and a model leader to all of us growing up in the African National Congress. I think our hearts have sunk. The flags of the country and the African National Congress in particular are flying a tough mass today.
The Department of Correctional Services is expected to release a statement on the death of George Luca this morning. The man accused of the 2010 killing of strip club owner Lolly Jackson died in custody last night. He had been suffering from terminal cancer. Last month, Luca lost a bid to return to his home country of Cyprus to die near his family. The presidency is expected to give reasons for the termination of an inquiry into the fitness of advocate Mxolisi Nkazana to head the NPA. The commission was expected to kick off yesterday, but it never got underway. Advocate Nkazana's previous brush with the law, including his 1985 murder charge acquittal, was set to come under the spotlight. The Cape Town High Court is due to rule whether 3 opposition parties will be allowed to challenge Speaker Baleka Mbete in court. Yesterday, judgment was reserved on whether Ahang has complied with court procedures before the matter between himself and National Assembly Speaker could be heard. Ahang, the UDM and COPE are challenging Mbete's fitness to hold office. Meanwhile, the Western Cape High Court is expected to hand down judgment today in the DA's application rising from the State of the Nation address saga. The DA wants to have Section 11 of the powers, privileges and immunities of Parliament declared unconstitutional. This provision allows the police, on the instruction of the presiding officer, to remove people from Parliament and to have them arrested. The party wants the court to make a ruling declaring that Section 11 does not apply to MPs. The DA says it was compelled to approach the court following the events at this year's State of the Nation address when plainclothes security officers landed EFF MPs out of the National Assembly chambers. And a case of arson has been opened after a fire destroyed about 70% of the Glencoe Correctional Centre in KwaZulu-Natal. The fire broke out at the facility yesterday afternoon. Initially, members of correctional services tried to put out the fire but failed. It was later contained by municipal firefighters. Officials say hundreds of inmates have since been moved to nearby prisons. Well, today we start with one of the stories currently in court. The Cape Town High Court is due to rule whether 3 opposition parties will be allowed to challenge Speaker Baleka Mbete in court. Ahang Parliamentary leader Andries Ama is challenging the Speaker of the National Assembly's fitness to hold office. Yesterday, judgment was reserved on whether Ahang has complied with court procedures before the matter between himself and the Speaker can be heard. Some of the court procedures require the applicant to notify interested parties and the wider public of its case before the matter can be heard. Now, as the matter continues today, SABC parliamentary reporter Lukanya Kalata joins us from Cape Town to give us the latest. Lukanya, thank you very much for joining us today.
Morning, Anine.
Well, we've seen this matter in the court yesterday. Just tell us exactly what happened in court before we get to today.
And then I think yesterday we were expecting the resumption for the two sets of legal counsels to actually start debating or arguing the merits of this case. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Instead, what we saw was that the legal counsels arguing on, well, the legal counsel for the Speaker, for instance, wanted this matter to be postponed, saying that they wanted to give other possibly interested party in the matter to come on board and to declare their interest to the court and possibly even join in as friends of the court in the case. The legal counsel for the political parties, Ahang, the UDM and COPE, they felt that the Speaker's office was trying to play for time in this matter, and by playing for time, making sure that the political parties are actually bled dry. That was the phrase that was used by the councils. So for half a day yesterday, we never got to see the merits of the case being discussed. Instead, we had to and fro about whether or not the case should be postponed, and eventually the full bench that was hearing the matter the three judges decided that, look, they will need a little bit of time to consider what to do in this case, and then they've set down judgment for 11:30 this morning, and then they will decide whether or not the case will proceed or if it will be postponed to allow other interested parties to come forth and register their interest and possibly join as friends of the court in this matter. Anin?
Now, Ahang, COPE and the UDM have said that Mbete's legal team is making use of delaying tactics here, but you have given us a bit of like what we can expect to see in court today. Why are these three parties so confident about their case?
Look, I think the fact they're trying to make sure that, I think their ultimate goal is trying to make sure that the Speaker essentially doesn't preside over matters such as votes of no confidence. I think if they succeed in that, obviously it will kind of change the way that Parliament functions. They would want, of course, to also make sure that when it comes to voting after the matter has been debated and then it's put to a vote, that vote is then done through secret ballot. And I think the reasons for their confidence is known only to them. Unfortunately, I mean, if I start talking about that, I think I'd be speculating on that matter. But I do feel that they are confident enough to have taken this matter as far as they have. We don't know, however, if their case is good enough and it will stand or will pass muster in the High Court. That will be determined by how the judges rule a little bit later this morning. Anin?
Lukanya, just looking at the fact that the ANC is the majority in Parliament, just looking at that fact, how successful do we think are they going to be? Or some might say this might just be more waste of money.
Anin, I don't necessarily think it is a waste of money in the sense that, look, we do live in a constitutional democracy, and every decision, every ruling by, for instance, the Speaker of Parliament, political parties are well within their rights to go to court and to have that ruling challenged. Whether or not they succeed is a completely different matter. The ANC, I think, the ANC caucus has kind of distanced themselves. They're standing a little bit further away from this matter to see, obviously, how it does unfold in the court. The second respondent in the case is the office of the President. And they've got legal counsel who were in court yesterday, and they basically said that they're not very interested in the argy-bargy that's taking place between Agang as well as the office of the Speaker, but they will be interested in anything that relates to the Constitution. So the presidency is there just to make sure that anything that relates to the Constitution, they are then able to come in and step in and clarify the president's position and try to obviously seek legal action in that regard. But they mentioned yesterday that they're not interested in the argy-bargy between the Speaker and Agang. I think, Anin, if I can add here, that the political parties won't, even if they succeed in having the Speaker not preside over motions of no confidence, I doubt very hard that they will be successful in them getting the Speaker removed from the National Assembly, because only the National Assembly, a full sitting of the National Assembly, the majority of it can decide on whether or not a Speaker is fit to hold office. And the court, I doubt, will even venture into trying to say whether or not the Speaker is fit to hold office. Only, and the Constitution makes it very clear, I think it's section 52 of the Constitution that deals in how a Speaker can be removed from her position. And I doubt that the parties will be able to do that by going to the court. Anin?
Well, Lekani, we thank you for joining us today, just telling us what happened in court yesterday. Of course, we'll keep a close eye on what is happening with that case in court today. Now, let's just have a look at some of the tweets that you've been sending in. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Here we see Sipo says, one of the ironies of the liberation struggle, Ruth has died. Rip Ruth Mompati. Army General says, Rip Mama Ruth Mompati, you will be remembered for all the good work you did for this beautiful country. Then another tweet coming in say, I remember you from my beginning. May his soul rest in peace. And this is the last, just the last tweet coming in, a picture of Ruth. We will be remembering the ANC stalwart today, of course, after hearing the sad news that she's passed away at the age of 89. Then we just take a look at today's picture. It comes from Luthando Maseko, caption, sad news to wake up to the death of Miss Ruth Mompati. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. Starting in Europe, today the Times reports that David Cameron fired a warning shot by the BBC, choosing a fierce critic to take charge of deciding its future amid anger over the corporation's election coverage. Staying in Europe, the International New York Times says the European Union is expected this week to submit a proposal to distribute migrants across 28 member bloc officials. Said on Monday, a plan that would encounter fierce resistance from some national governments. And finally, in the USA, the US Today reports that residents have begun surveying damage near an elementary school caused by severe weather in Texas yesterday. About 30% of the community was damaged from the storm late on Sunday. Residents said damage near an elementary school caused by the storm was severe. Well, it's time to take a look at what's happening in and around the country. We start in Johannesburg, where 3 men accused of shooting dead 2 police officials and injuring a third one on the N3 highway are expected to be back in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court. Then still in Johannesburg, the trial of Ntaleni Mpoku, accused of killing Reiger Park toddler Cuban van Beek, is expected to continue in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge. And in Bloemfontein, triple murder accused John Sonnenberg and his wife Ilana are expected to appear in the Hartbeespoort Magistrate Court. The couple was arrested after the bodies of 3 men who reported missing in February this year were found in a shallow grave on their farm. Before we go to an ad break, we here at Newsroom would like to apologize for an incident that took place live on air yesterday. During a live interview with one of our guests, Mr. Ande Duplessis lit what appeared to be a marijuana cigarette. We here at Newsroom cannot condone this behavior and again would like to apologize for this event that was well out of our control. It's time now to take a break. We'll see you in just a bit.
Zoom into Africa. This is Seychelles. The president is Mr. James Michel James. Seychelles got independent from United Kingdom on 29 June in 1976. The population is over 80,000 people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is the Seychelles rupee.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. The pilot accused of killing a motorist in one of the country's most recent road rage incidents has been granted bail and is due to be back in court on the 22nd of May. Last week, the father from Captain Park was traveling with his 2 children when he allegedly shot another motorist in the face after accusing him of jumping a stop street. Now, a study sponsored by the Foundation for Traffic Safety indicates that violent traffic incidents have increased by nearly 7% since 1999. To discuss the behavior of South Africans on our roads and to look at road rage incidents, we're joined today by the spokesperson for the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police Department, Mr. Wayne Minnar, and by the founding member of Justice Project South Africa, Howard Dembowski. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Morning.
Wayne, if I could maybe start with you. We hear about all the terrible incidents that make the headlines. As the police, with how many cases are you dealing? I know that you're specifically working in Gauteng. Then if we can focus on the province, how many cases you're dealing with of road rage?
There are many cases of road rage having been reported. And one of the worst cases was last year on Hendrik Potgieter, where there was a driver of a van and a guy on a motorcycle. And in that incident, they both had firearms. And one drew out the firearm, the other drew the firearm too, and one person died. So, yes, it's a serious problem, road rage.
Mr. Minnar, I'm very glad you brought up the fact that people are traveling with weapons. How is this something that we can look at controlling? Because clearly we see that when motorists are in this type of fit of rage, they are using these weapons, they are becoming violent. Is this something that we would ever be able to control?
You see, it's about behavior. Sorry. It's about behavior when one is driving on the road. If you react violently or aggressively to another person, you don't know the frame of mind of the other person. And if the other person is also aggressive and the other person or the other driver is armed with a weapon, the consequences could be very bad. So we want to encourage motorists to take it easy on the roads, to obey road traffic regulations, because you find that the majority of these cases is where one motorist is offending other motorists or drivers by driving badly, either cutting in front of other drivers, or skipping stop signs or red lights, crossing solid white lines, overtaking and not indicating. Those are the kind of offenses that offends other drivers. And that's when we find the motorists or other drivers responding aggressively and ending up in road rage.
Howard, maybe that's where I can bring you in. Why do we resort to being at each other's throats?
Well, look, there are a number of reasons for it. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to be able to delve into the psyche of people, but I can tell you what people are feeling. They are feeling utter frustration at the gridlock traffic that we have, number one. Number two, the fact that nobody obeys the law. The fact that other people are allowed to get away with not obeying the law. And then you get individuals who believe that it is their function to act as a traffic cop. And that's where the problem really comes in. And, you know, we can talk about people carrying firearms, etc., but we've had people pull out pangas, we've had people pull out axes, etc., etc. And, you know, these things don't have good outcomes. Unfortunately, this all comes down to huge frustration on our roads, and I think it has been largely contributed to by the fact that we have so little visible policing around that people have come to expect that they can do as they wish, when they wish, on the roads, and nothing is going to happen to them. But now they're getting taught this lesson that something is going to happen to them. They're going to get shot in the face, they're going to get axed in the shoulder, etc., etc. This is a very, very dangerous situation, and it's vigilante justice. That's the problem.
Mr. Minnaar, on the topic of the policing, is this something that is it fair to expect just the police to be able to control this?
You see, the fact of the matter is that there cannot be an officer on every corner. So where drivers or motorists take the law into their own hands, there's going to be a problem. So leave the law enforcement to the law enforcement officers, let them do their jobs. And when a motorist is driving, take it easy. Don't want to show the other driver how you're going to stop them or how you're going to be showing fingers at them or signs.
We have an incident, yes,
and then,
on screen right here.
And then we have the other driver acting aggressively. And the other driver might just not be a person who is stable, who has a psychological problem, and then pulls out a firearm, and the consequences is disastrous. So motorists must take it easy on the roads, obey the road traffic regulations so that we can reduce the incidence of road rage.
Yes. If you actually read up a bit on Arrival Live's website, psychiatrists have said that this isn't just always a fit of anger. They call it an explosive disorder, and that 5 to 7% of the population are suffering from this. Is this something that you can actually get help for, Howard?
Well, there are most certainly psychologists who specialize in treating these kind of disorders. But the problem with that is just like with everything else. First, you have to actually admit that you have a problem. And that is the key problem here. You may not actually realize that you have that problem until you explode. And that is the very sad part of this whole thing. But if you find yourself getting irritated when you're driving to work, if you're getting to work in a huff and you need 3/4 of an hour to calm down before you can actually start doing your work, there's a problem. And you need to adjust your behavior as well as expecting others to adjust their behavior. Let's just remember that most of these road rage incidents take two parties, and unfortunately they escalate the second that one or the other party starts getting aggressive and the other party starts reacting to it.
Mr. Minnaar, from the police's side, is there a type of plan in place, especially for the Gauteng province, to deal with these type of incidents?
Look, the approach has always been to have intensified law enforcement, to have officers enforcing the law all over and as strict as possible. But where one finds one offender or one motorist offending another motorist or other people on the road, and then we have one person or more reacting violently, and that's when we have road rage. So it's about getting drivers, getting motorists to be as calm as possible, to obey road traffic regulations, because you find where one motorist disregards the road traffic regulations and then offends other motorists in the process. That's in most cases when we have road rage. For an example, skipping of a red light, because there's a possibility of endangering other people's lives if you skip a red light. and you have someone else reacting violently, then it results in road rage.
Looking at some of the contributing factors, Howard, we can say that, yes, if there's a pothole in the road, that is something that needs to be fixed. That's going to take time. But something like the population, the traffic that we see on the roads currently, how is that ever going to be something that's addressed when we don't really necessarily have access, you know, to public transport?
Well, the thing is that traffic is a fact of life in almost every country in the world. And, you know, if you're going to commute, make sure that you do it calmly, not least of which of reasons is to actually protect yourself. You should always be driving defensively, not offensively. And unfortunately, people have adopted this offensive stance. Only yesterday, there was another incident of road rage where a guy was trying to push into the traffic. This lady didn't let him in. And he then decided that he's going to punish her. He pulled in front of her, slammed on brakes. Then he swerved all over the place, followed her around, called her all sorts of unsightly names, and then circled her workplace in his motor car. Now, this is the kind of rage that we're talking about, and it is truly rage. People don't know what they're doing when they're in this kind of situation. And the fact is that if we all just realize that a little bit of courtesy goes a huge, huge, huge long way. If you drive a motor car and you let somebody else into traffic, just watch what they do with the next person who wants to get into traffic. They will give that person a break, usually. Okay, you do get the arrogant idiot from time to time that, you know, well, it's my entitlement to carry on. But if we started adopting a far more courteous attitude on our roads, we would resolve a lot of these problems. And if you can see that somebody is pushing to get in, you know what, just make a gap for them and say, please be my guest. Okay, and a smile can often disarm a frown or an angry face.
Mr. Minnaar, if I'm a motorist experiencing something like this, like how I just explained, someone is following me around, it's literally becoming a situation where I'm feeling uncomfortable. If I go to the police and I report this, are they going to take me seriously?
Oh, definitely. Look, any incident of intimidation is serious, or assault, or an attempt to assault is serious. So such incidents must be reported to the police so that it can be investigated. And call for help. If you're really in a situation that you believe that the other person is a person who is, or looks aggressive and looks unstable, because you don't know the frame of mind of another person or another driver. So therefore, it's important for all drivers to obey road traffic regulations and to take it easy. And if there is an incident, to report or call for help. Call the police immediately if you think that your life is in danger.
You are shaking your head, Howard.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the facts of life here. Police do not take these matters seriously at all. You can phone 10-111 all you like, and they're not going to pay any attention to you. In a lot of instances, if you go into a police station to report the incident, you're going to get turned away, because somehow, unfortunately, we have police members who sit behind service counters and decide which cases they're going to take and which cases they're not going to take, despite the fact that our law doesn't provide for that. A policeman is supposed to take your complaint. But the fact is that you should insist on it. And if that person behind the counter gives you lip about it or says, I'm not going to take this case because I don't think it's serious, then ask to see the station commander and report it. The fact is, vehicles have number plates generally, so to track that person down should not be as difficult as it would be if, for example, it was just some silent attacker. And people need to be put in their place. There is another number that people can phone. It's 0861 400 800, and that's manned by the RTMC. That's a nationwide number. Incidentally, don't try phone 10-111 from your cell phone. Use 112 because you probably won't get through to 10-111.
Mr. Minnaar, I understand that some people might have had a bad experience when they do go to the police, but then can you tell us that insisting is the key here if you do have difficulty reporting any of these cases to the police?
Look, it's important to report an incident so that there's a record of it firstly and so that it can be investigated. But what is important is to obey road traffic regulations. And if you do come across someone else who disregards the law, just be calm. Don't want to play policeman. Leave the law enforcement to the law enforcement authorities. They have got a job. The law enforcement authorities are paid to enforce the law. Don't want to enforce the law yourself. Be calm, be patient, and let the law enforcement authorities do their jobs.
Well, gentlemen, I thank you very much for joining us this morning to talk on this very important topic. We do hope that motorists will take to heart what you've said today. Let's just now take a look at what you have been saying on social media. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. There we can say Figo says if there was anyone that deserved medical parole, it was George Luca. But then again, Tom Magic says, was it with prison and lung cancer? Question mark, hashtag George Luca. Lungisi says those who need it most didn't get it. Medical parole, but few and famous do. Rip George Luca. And Takali says George Luca, RIP, a miscarriage to justice. Well, let's just have a look at what the tweet of the day is. It comes from Nomfundu Kize. Dear Ma'am Ruth Mompati, you are proof that women have long been leading long before it was fashionable. Rest in peace, Mama. Now take a look at what's been happening here on Newsroom on our Facebook page. You can see there today that George Luca's lawyer has described his client's death as a miscarriage of justice. Luca died at approximately 8:30 last night at the Kosi Mampuru Prison Hospital. Then more than 50,000 Burundians have fled to neighboring countries in recent weeks amid violent protests triggered by the president's plan to run for a third term. And the European Union's chief diplomat has assured migrants trying to reach Europe via the Mediterranean that they would not be sent back to their countries of origin. Well, it's time now to go to an ad break. Please be back with us after this.
Welcome to your world on SABC News Channel 404. I'm Tabile Ngwato.
And I'm Lulu Gabu.
President Uhuru Kenyatta says he will attend the status conference for his crimes against humanity case, but in his personal capacity and not as president of Kenya.
Judges insist he attends this status conference.
About 50 Kenyan MPs are expected to travel to The Hague to express solidarity with President Kenyatta.
The Kenya cases have really tested the International Criminal Court in ways that it hasn't yet been tested.
Your World, weekdays at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Condolences and tributes are pouring in this morning after the death of ANC stalwart Ruth Mompati. The ANC stalwart has died at the age of 89. She worked for the ANC in Tanzania and Zambia in the 1960s and became a member of the ANC's Women's League, NEC. She was also one of the leaders of the anti-pass law march to the Union Buildings in 1956. The Department of Correctional Services is expected to release a statement this morning on the death of George Luca. He was the man accused of the 2010 killing of strip club owner Lolly Jackson, who died, and he died in custody last night. He had been suffering from terminal lung cancer. Last month, Luca lost a bid to return to his home country of Cyprus to die near his family. And the presidency is expected to give reasons for the termination of an inquiry into the fitness of advocate Mkhosi Nkosana to head the NPA. The commission was expected to kick off yesterday, but it never got underway. Advocate Nkosana's previous brush with the law, including his 1985 murder charge acquittal, is set to come under the spotlight. Now, a mass memorial service for 8 correctional services officers will be held in Swellendam today. The 8 correctional services officials who were working at the Buffel-Jagsrivier Correctional Centre in Swellendam died while they were on their way to work last week. 4 other officials were also seriously injured in the horror accident on the N2 near Swellendam. Now, SABC reporter Carmel Lochenberg is attending the memorial service this morning, and she joins us from Swellendam to give us the latest. Carmel, thank you very much for joining us today. Just if you can give us the latest from the memorial service there. We see people have started arriving.
Yes, Janine. Now, the memorial service is expected to kick off at 11 o'clock. As you can see behind me, there are a few people that have arrived. As I said, it will start at 11 o'clock this evening, so we expected more people to arrive about in the next half an hour or so. Now, Swellendam is quite a small community. It's quite a close-knit community. And we have spoken to a few community members, and we've spoken to them about how has the atmosphere been since the accident last week, Monday. And many of them said there's been a lot of support from community members, the affected families, people have been rallying around them. So we expected to see a lot of that support today when the memorial service kicks off.
Carmel, this has been a tragic incident for the Department of Correctional Services. What have they come out to say about the accident?
Well, later today, we'll expect the Deputy Minister of Correctional Services, Dabang Mogatle, to address. He'll be bringing the message of support. And we'll be hearing more about latest developments, what's happened subsequent to the crash on Monday. We also expect the Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters. She's also expected to attend, and we'll get a few developments on that as well. Most of the family members that have arrived will also speak to them. And some of the correctional services, they're also here in their numbers.
If we can just put some of our viewers back in the picture, just tell us if we could recap some of the incidents that happened during this accident that led to the death of these many men. Can you just tell us what some of those facts are?
Yes, well, the accident took place last week, Monday. It happened about 7 o'clock in the morning. And the correctional service officers were on their way to work. It took place on the N2, and it was about a few kilometers outside of Swellendam. The accident took place about 2 kilometers from the Buffel-Jagsrivier Correctional Service facility. So they were practically at work when the accident took place. Now, according to our witnesses and people that we spoke to following the crash, they said that there were 3 vehicles involved, one vehicle being the correctional service vehicle, the second vehicle being a truck, and then the third vehicle being a bakkie. We spoke to the driver of the bakkie, and he said he was turning into a farm on the N2 on that day, and he saw the truck coming towards him. The truck then knocked him from behind and turned onto the oncoming traffic, and that's when the head-on collision happened with the correctional service vehicle.
Carmel, is there any update on the men who were seriously injured in the accident? How are they doing?
Well, we expect to hear more about that today. We do understand that there were 2 people that were injured. One was in the correctional service vehicle, and the second was the driver of the truck. So we expected to hear more about that today. Both of the occupants were hospitalized, and the last time that we did speak to correctional service officials, that was the latest update that we had.
Well, Carmel, I thank you very much for joining us today, just giving us an update from the memorial service. We'll be looking out on Twitter for what you'll be tweeting from there. Now, teams will embark on the annual Cape to Cairo roadshow once again this week. The teams will journey across the African continent for the 6th consecutive year, covering 12,000 kilometers, 11 cities and 8 countries in 4.5 months. Philips will launch the roadshow this evening at the V&A waterfront, where they will illuminate the clock tower to commemorate the beginning of their journey across Africa. They hope to bring a brighter future to the developing countries through eco-friendly lighting solutions and healthcare. Joining us from our Sea Point studio is the General Manager and Vice President of Philips Lighting Africa, Terry Bolonga. Terry, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Anine.
Like I've mentioned, 6th consecutive year, what is the main focus points for you this year?
Anine, as you quite rightly mentioned, our businesses is healthcare and lighting. I represent the lighting side. And we embark every year, as you quite rightly said, the 6th consecutive year now, where we go through 8 countries, 11 cities, and we look at engaging with different parties, government specifically, in terms of beautifying the cities from a lighting perspective. We also work very closely with the health facilities to see how we can actually operate and improve people's lives in specific areas throughout the African continent. Some of the countries that we've already had a very big impact. If I start at the top, it's obviously in Cairo, in Algeria, in Morocco, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Kenya, and naturally in Cape Town and in Johannesburg as well.
It's quite a lot of countries to cover. Just tell us how this journey will actually be taking place, how you will be actually transporting the equipment. It must have been a lot of thought going into this.
Well, I think the first, you're quite right. Logistically, it's a challenge. But we have a very wide selection of partners that we work with. And for us, what's key is to actually use the partners that are in country to train those partners. So there's an element of skills development. We use the local partners to actually do the installation. But more importantly, it's great to just go there and to install. But you want the installation to be maintained and sustainable. When I talk about sustainability, it's not only the technology that's important, but it's also to ensure that we use the latest technologies, that it isn't a burden from an energy perspective. So we use very, very energy efficient lighting systems. And when you're looking at beautifying a monument, which is the pride of a nation, what really comes out in terms of the lighting is absolutely fantastic.
You mentioned the lighting there, and lighting is thought to consume around 15% of the total electricity output of an industrial economy like South Africa. So how are we moving towards a greener energy industry?
A lot of different stages throughout the continent of Africa. But one thing I can clearly say is that most of the countries do experience what we experience, which is load shedding. We have the opportunity to leapfrog technologies, so really to go from the old incandescent type of technologies right through to the new LED type of technologies. And that has a direct impact on our energy consumption. But if we look at public-private partnerships, a simple elements like looking at the highways or at main roads, in the evening you see street lights burning. Can you imagine if you simply applied different technologies, such as dimming the street lights when there's no movement, or even switching them off, and only when there's movement do the street lights come on? And you can also start controlling the street lights in different manners. So if there's an accident or an incident, you can increase the intensity at that particular intersection. What we're also seeing a lot of is moving to solar energy. So that is becoming, although the technologies are in its infancy, we're starting to see a lot of technology moving to solar energy. So that is becoming very, very viable. But what we need to also look at, and these are some of the models that we look at, is to really say to the customer, Mr. Customer, take a snapshot of what you're paying for electricity today. Come and speak to us. We will upgrade your technology in your building, and you simply pay us with the savings that you actually realize in terms of the new technology that we're going to retrofit into either your building or your streets, etc. So there are ways and means of doing this very efficiently to actually convert the technology into a very efficient way.
Let's just quickly end with the specific projects you have for this year. We know 3 years ago you provided solar panel LED lighting for about 100 small football pitches. What are the special projects that you're going to be working on this year?
So that's the second part of our push. We have the Cape to Cairo, the Philips Cape to Cairo, and the second one, which is our community light centers, the Philips Community Light Centers. And really what it is to be able to provide a source of energy which is solar driven to either light up football pitches in rural areas, but you're also finding that the impact it has on a little village where you light up the market, you start increasing trading hours, you start having a much higher safety factor, and these have absolutely positive impacts on education, on trading, on safety in rural villages. We've done 100 of these across Africa, and we will carry on doing that. In fact, we're busy speaking to a lot of customers at the moment. We're about to close a deal in an organization in South Africa, which I won't divulge right now, but very, very shortly, something very exciting in the South African context will be happening as well.
Well, Terry, thank you for joining us. We do wish you luck with that. That is the Vice President of Philips Lighting Africa, Terry Bolanga, joining us from Sea Point. Now, the presidency is expected to give reasons for the termination of an inquiry into the fitness of the advocate Mxolisi Nkazana to head the NPA. The commission was expected to kick off yesterday, but it never got underway. Advocate Nkazana's previous brush with the law, including his 1985 murder charge acquittal, was set to come under the spotlight.
This is the first sitting of the Commission of Inquiry.
Over before it started. The presidency instructed Kasim at the 11th hour to terminate the inquiry. The president is currently engaging Nkazana with a view to taking decisions which are in the best interest of the NPA, Nkazana and the country at large. The statement also emphasizes the importance of public confidence in the NPA, which falls under the Ministry of Justice.
It's the president that initiates such an inquiry, not the Minister of Justice.
In his submission on the importance of the inquiry, the minister emphasized that the head of the NPA's brushes with the law reflect adversely on Nkazana's credibility, honesty and integrity, and his fitness and propriety to be the NDPP.
Is there any deal on the table?
It would be grossly inappropriate for me to be expected to say anything along those lines. The appropriate thing to do is to allow the presidency to talk to the nation and giving reasons and everything, which culminated in him making the decision.
Nkazana remains in his office for now. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now let's take a look at what you've been saying on social media. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. You can see the first tweet coming in there from Jam Ali, at least on the new SABC Encore. I can't stop laughing. A lot has changed. Yes, that is about the new channel launching. Dominic says, but I still feel people from the rural should have been considered as well to have an experience of this SABC Encore. Joseph says, thank you, Minister, for bringing back my back to the SABC Encore channel 156. Then Andila says, when are they playing the Rainbow Starship? Asking what will be aired on that channel. Gregory says, and who would have thought Michelle was on top billing? I thought she did 50-50 all her life. Well, luckily this channel will be putting you in the picture. We end today with news just in. A 7.4 magnitude earthquake has struck Nepal, with tremors felt at least as far away as India's capital, New Delhi. The quake follows a 7.8 magnitude earthquake on April the 25th, which was the most powerful to hit the country since 1934. We'll keep you updated with the latest from that story on this channel. Now, Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 o'clock. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.